Greetings, it is I, Countess Narvan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome! It is time to continue my discussion on Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, the second edition of AD&D. We last left off, we began talking about treasure, that which your players will accumulate over the course of the games they'll be playing in. Let's dive deeper into it. We did mention a little bit about too much or too little treasure. Let's talk about these differences. The thing about too little treasure is if you are going on adventures, players are going to expect some kind of accurate reward for the actions they're going to do in the course of those adventures. If you do not have enough treasure to feel like this was being a very rewarding thing, players are going to feel like the actions they were taking weren't worthwhile. And if this repeats, they come to an expectation of this lack of worth. Stop having some fun, and might not even show up for sessions. They begin to see the lack of treasure as something that's reflecting the lack of reward for an adventure. Now, granted, if you wanted to be in a world where there isn't a huge amount of treasure, you could supplement this with more personal game sort of rewards for your characters. Different things that make them affect the world around them for the various actions. These can make up to a degree, but it's very hard to keep this interest in it that they're getting rewarded for their actions without giving out treasure. It's a very hard balancing act. Not to say you couldn't, but it is recommended that you try to at least use some form of treasure, even if you are using these non-treasure based rewards, and you can get your characters to be very enthused about these said rewards. Again, it's a balancing act. And the thing about this balance, though, is you can always correct it, especially behind the scenes. People will never know when you start to insert more treasure into the game. You could flesh out the first couple of rewards your players are going to get, and if it looks like they're not very enthused about the amount of gold with the other kinds of rewards you may be getting them to supplement it, then you could always add some more treasure in, and the next time, just put it a little higher that they feel a little better about that. Try to balance out the level to what seems appropriate. Now on the other end of too little, too much treasure. Now this one's also quite difficult to deal with because players are always going to love treasure, but you as the game master might not. Treasure does, for one thing, represent an overall power of the characters, so they're going to be a little more powerful. And second is if you're giving these huge treasures out, a player is going to have an expectation of either a huge treasure on the next adventure or bigger treasure on the next adventure. And you might not be able to top yourself. So there comes this cycle of either trying to top yourself or disappointment from the characters when they don't hit that huge mark of treasure that they were expecting. These things can also draw your players out of the game, which you don't really want them to do. You want them to feel involved in the game. Now, other than just cutting back on the amount of treasure that you give them, that's one thing that might correct it. But again, then you have that problem with your characters. What you might want to do is, of course, get rid of some of the treasure that exists. To do this, you can go be creative. It's somehow lost. Thieves, taxes. But you shouldn't just hit them with stuff and have them have no opportunity to stop this. Give them an opportunity to sort of correct some of this mistake that you're making. Well, give them an opportunity to fight against the corrections that you're doing. And that itself can be an adventure, that maybe the heroes have all this huge pile of treasure and some thief sneaks in and steals a whole bunch of it and they can attempt to go after the thief. Along the way, you could do something that causes, it gets lost, swings beneath the ocean, something like that. They don't have the money to take care of it. You can solve it problems, but you should make it that the players could theoretically take care of it themselves and actually keep their money. It might be a way to keep them involved. Another way, if things just seem too dire, reset the campaign. You've been making mistakes. The characters, they're retired. You're going to start with a new character. Sometimes players are going to be unhappy about that, but you can always just say that whatever ideas you had are more pertained to lower level characters, better than that. You don't necessarily need to tell them, I over-treasured you. But when you start the next one, their expectations will be sort of refreshed. Now let's talk about the most important part of any treasure, the magic item. The magic item represents a portion of power that players are often going to be using to enhance themselves. Players very often will not say no to a magic item. Most of the time they will say yes, yes, yes to a magic item, take it and use it to enhance their characters and make them better, make them more suited for combat, because a lot of magic items do help in combat. It adds power, survivability, and a little bit of wonder to the games, these magic items, a little bit of interest that way. Now, when we talk about magic items and treasure, we do have to mention our friends, the unintelligent and the intelligent creatures. Unintelligent creatures, if you find one in a random encounter that might have some treasure on it for whatever reason, it will never have a magic item. It might just have, for whatever reason, something with it because of the nature of the creature. These things don't recognize the value of magic items. Doesn't mean you can't find one if you go towards its lair. You might find one outside of its lair or inside its lair if a previous victim that it had killed had a magic item. So there is a possibility that an unintelligent creature could have a magic item, just not directly. Intelligent creatures, on the other hand, oftentimes learn and recognize the value of magic items. That means they will use them to their advantage. If it's a potion, it's going to put it in a place where it can actually drink that potion. If it's a weapon, it's going to use that weapon. If it's a piece of armor, it's going to wear that piece of armor, or find someone that can work for them and wear that piece of armor. If it's something they cannot use at all or don't know anybody they can use, they'll try to trade it for either gold or items that they could use through someone else that might have it. You can see the use of it, that they can recognize its value and plan out using it appropriately. Now, money is going to be accumulated by your characters, and they might want to use that money to purchase things. When we talk about purchasing magic items, don't have a store. It is not appropriate. Let me explain it this way. Think of it that your players, when they gain a magic item, more often than not, they're not going to sell it. There might be an odd one out amongst the items that they have that they decide none of them can use. They'll sell it off. Most of them they're going to keep to themselves. NPCs are going to do the exact same thing. They're going to keep it to themselves, except for maybe occasionally one or two. This is not a very good system for sustaining trade, and therefore not sustaining a store. You might find just a normal store that might have a magic item within it because of various reasons that it's there. But it's not specifically selling that magic item, it's selling something else. One of them happens to be a magic item. A weapon shop that happens to have a magic sword. An armor shop that happens to have a magic armor. Think something like that they're going to exist. Things like potions and scrolls, they do tend to have some sale to them, but those are more when someone makes them, someone will purchase them, that sort of thing. You're not going to see that there's going to be a resale on potions and scrolls. People are going to want to keep those and use them. So you can see a little bit of the absurdity of the concept of the magic item shop. There's more than likely going to be not enough trade for it to exist within. And the thing is, most of the time you're going to actually more want to encourage your characters to make their own magic items because it feels much more satisfying to use something you created in order to defeat your enemies rather than something you bought in a store. Granted, picking up something in a dungeon or through part of a treasure is also just as rewarding as if you made it yourself. But making it requires money. There you go. So you have a place that one of your players could spend some money, make some items, share it with his friends, arm everybody up, make it feel more appropriate than going to a store and buying something. Not to say, again, they couldn't. It's just you're not going to find that magic item shop. It's a strange concept that we might recognize in our more modern sensibilities, but in the sensibility of a fantasy world where magic items do tend to be more rare, nah, not really. Again, if you alter your world that there are magic items everywhere, then it might make sense there's a store somewhere. But then again, a lot of people are going to have magic items, and they're not as special anymore. You see, there's a cycle with everything, that when you make these decisions, it reflects your world a lot. So that's it for today. I first finished up talking about treasure, by talking about having too much treasure or too little treasure, and trying to balance out between the two of these to get to that sweet spot where you feel like you're appropriately rewarding your characters. Then I began talking about magic items. I, of course, included talking about just the general logistics of where you'd find magic items when you're getting it in treasure, and buying magic items. Does it make sense? A little bit, but not to a great degree. You're not going to find stores of it. You might find randomly one in a shop or something, but that's about it. And even then, it's not maybe not be the one you're looking for. You don't have that huge variety that a shop might have. You've got what did this fighter guy in his weapon shop have? Oh, a great sword? I don't use a great sword. Bump bump. In the next episode, I'm going to dive deeper into magic items, talking about rare ones, common ones, and researching them, all the various more details based around magic items. But if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It's just support the channel, the Empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon, link in the description below. Regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.